Okay, so this is the Tosefta. This is Parak Yod, chapter 10. I'm going to be reading some stuff here, and it's gonna sound it could sound kind of odd here, but I want to preface this because the actual conclusion of what it's saying is at the very end, and someone might lose track because there's a lot of people out there that say like Jewish law like allows you to do certain things. So you're going to hear the word that something is liable or is exempt, and that is in relation to stoning, the death by stoning. So it doesn't mean that these people that commit these acts are not like free to do it freely in society. It's just that they're exempt from the punishment of stoning. So I have to put that out there because there's all kinds of crazies out there that think that Judaism allows you to do all kinds of stuff, and it's not. So you'll hear it at the very end. But here we go. So Rabbi Yehuda says, he who has sexual relations with his mother is liable only on account of her being his mother alone. Rabbi Yehuda says, he who has sexual relations with his father's wife is liable on her account only because of her being his father's wife alone. He who has sexual relations with his mother, who is also a widow married to a high priest, a divorcee, or a woman who has undergone the rite of removal of the shoe married to an ordinary priest, or who was a woman whom the father had raped or seduced, or who was in one of any of the prohibited degrees of relationship to his father, is liable. And again, that's liable to stoning. So he who has sexual relations with his father's wife, who also is a widow married to a high priest, or a divorcee, or a woman who has undergone the rite of removal of the shoe married to an ordinary priest, is liable, again, to stoning. If she was a woman whom the father had raped or seduced, or who was in one of any of the prohibited degrees of relationship to his father, he's exempt. And that's exempt from stoning. That doesn't mean he didn't do anything bad. It's just that he's exempt from the punishment of stoning, which is the death penalty, right? See, he who has sexual relations with his sister is liable on account of on account of her being his sister, and on the count of her being his father's daughter. Rabbi Yoshi says he is liable only on the count of her being his daughter alone. And so too, he who has relations with his daughter-in-law, and he who has relations with a male 9 years old and 1 day, and he who has relations with a cow, and the woman who brings an ox on top of her, and he who has performed an act of service to an idol, all the same are the one who performs an act of service, who actually sacrifices, offers up incense, who pours out a libation offering, who bows down, and the one who accepts him upon himself as a god, saying to him, "You are my God, so save me." All of them are punished by stoning. So he who makes an idol, carves it, sets it up, anoints it, dries it, or scrapes it, transgresses a negative commandment, but they are liable only on account of a matter which involves an actual deed. For example, sacrificing, burning incense, pouring out a libation, or bowing down. But he who hugs it, kisses it, polishes it, sweeps it, washes it, anoints it, puts clothing on it, puts shoes on it, or puts a cloak on it, lo, these are subject to warning. So Rabbi Yehuda says, lo, Scripture says, and I will leave for myself in Israel 7,000, all the knees which did not bow to Baal, and all the mouths which did not kiss him. 1 Kings 19, verse 18. And Scripture thereby creates an analogy between kissing and bowing down. Just as bowing down imposes liability, so kissing imposes liability. And how are these put to death? At the hands of heaven. He who gives of his seed to Moloch is liable only when he will have given him to Moloch and have passed him through the fire. If he gave him to Moloch but did not pass him through fire but did not give him to Moloch, he is not liable until he will both have given him to Moloch and passed him through fire. And he is liable only when he have passed him through fire in the usual way. If he passed him through fire by foot, he is exempt. And he is liable moreover only on account of those who are his natural children. So this was also in the Mishnah Torah, the section on AvaTorahJudaism, foreign worship, because he brings down the halacha that you're only liable to that idol worshiping if you're doing it in the way that idol is normally worshipped. So if you throw stones at an idol, it's not, if that's not the idol's mode of worship, then that's completely fine. But if that's there was a particular idol, I think it's like Mercury or Merculos. If you throw stones at that idol, that's part of its worship, so that would be considered idol worship. So continuing here, he who passes his father, mother, or sister through fire for Moloch is exempt. because it's your children, not, your elders. He who passes through himself is exempt. Rabbi Elazar ben Rabbi Shimon declares him liable. So he's the lone voice there, but it follows the majority. So all the same as doing so for Moloch and for any other idol, he is liable. So you also have to think about the possibilities. Why would somebody do something like that? Like if you pass somebody else's child through the fire, it wasn't your child. Well, there's a possibility that like if somebody was trying to intentionally not worship the idol, but they were forced in some way or coerced or something like that, and they didn't want to do it, they don't want to worship the idol in its normal way, so they find a way to like not do it correctly, so that it's more a mockery of it than it is the worship of it, or in some secret way trying to kind of undermine things. I mean, those are possibilities you have to take into consideration of why someone might have done something that wasn't in the idol's normal mode of worship. So Rabbi Shimon says he is liable only on account of Moloch alone. He who has a familiar spirit, this is one who has a python which speaks from between the joints or between his elbows, a soothsayer, this one who has the bone of a familiar spirit in his mouth. Lo, these are put to death by stoning, and the one who makes inquiry of them is subject to a warning. So he who inquires of the dead, Deuteronomy 18:11, this is one who raises up the dead by witchcraft, or one who makes inquiry of a skull. What is the difference between one who makes inquiry of a skull and one who raises up the dead by witchcraft? For one who raises up the dead by witchcraft, the ghost does not come up in his normal way and does not come up on the Sabbath. But one who makes inquiry of a skull, the spirit comes up in the normal way and comes up on the Sabbath. So he who has relations with a betrothed maiden is liable only if she is a virgin maiden betrothed while she is yet in her father's house. If she was betrothed maiden but living in her father's house, a mature maiden betrothed living in her father's house, a married woman, whether in the house of her father or in the house of her husband, he who has relations with her, lo, this one is put to death by strangling. So it's not stoning, but it's strangling in this case. So if 10 men had intercourse with her and she was yet a virgin, all of them are put to death by stoning. So, but if she was not a virgin, the first is put to death by stoning, and all the others by strangulation. She who receives her husband well in her father's house, and even though she is a virgin, he who has relations with her is put to death through strangulation. A betrothed maiden who commits fornication, they stone her at the doorway of her father's house. She does not have a doorway of her father's house, they stone her in the place in which she fornicated. But if it was a Gentile town, they stone her at the door of the Israelite courthouse. Against all those who are liable to death penalty in the Torah, they do not hide witnesses, except for one who beguiles others to idolatry. How do they do it? They hand over to him 2 disciples of sages who are put in an inside room, and they sit in an outside room. And they light a candle so that they can see him, and they say to what he says. And so did they do to Ben Stada and Lydia. Maybe some of you might know who Ben Stada is. I do, but I'm not going to say it. They appointed against him 2 disciples of sages, and in consequence of what they heard and saw, and they stoned him. They began his trial by day and complete it even by night. They begin and complete it on the very same day, whether for acquittal or for conviction. They reach a decision on the basis of majority of 1, whether for acquittal or conviction. All have the right to argue for acquittal or conviction. He who argues for acquittal has the right to revert and to argue for conviction. A eunuch and one who has never had children may serve on the court. Rabbi Yehuda says, also the mean person may sit on the court in trial of this type.